the perfect vehicle for having fun while learning and play. Good day, grade 8 students! Welcome to Bamboo Telescuela. I am Teacher RHEA, your school teacher in Arts 8. Make sure to grab your modules with you and tune in to DWDY-AM, CMD Cable Channel 01, and live streaming at SDO Cauayan Facebook page. Last time, you have learned and explored the music of Indonesia. Today, you will learn and discover another country in Southeast Asia. Are you ready? So now, please fasten your seatbelt and let's have a quick tour in one of the most spectacular countries in Southeast Asia, and that is Malaysia.
Malaysia is situated just north of the equator between Thailand and Singapore. Malaysia is a federation of 13 states with 11 on the Malaysian peninsula and 2 on the island of Borneo. With a population of just over 27 million people, a low cost of living, and a year-round tropical climate, Malaysia remains a favorite destination for travelers the world over. Malaysia is a nation rich in diversities. One of the first places you'll notice this diversity is in the smiling faces of those waiting to greet you. Malaysia is truly a racial melting pot, where Malay, Indian, Chinese, and smaller ethnic groups live together in respectful harmony. Malaysia's diverse cultural heritage adds spice and colour to every aspect of life here, from religions and festivals to culinary traditions and architecture. The national language is Malay, but English is widely spoken, making it a breeze for travellers to find their way around and to get to know the locals. Malaysia is also a country of awe-inspiring geographical diversity. Looking for unspoiled beaches and clear tropical waters? In Malaysia, some of the world's most pristine islands and marine habitats await you.
Longing for a little adventure? Explore some of the Earth's steamiest jungles, wildest rivers, and longest cave systems. Malaysia is a land of natural diversity. As one of the 12 most biologically diverse countries in the world, Malaysia is a treasure trove of amazing natural richness and beauty. 70% of the country's land area remains forested, and the country is a world leader in conservation and sustainable tourism programs. Malaysia is a place of diverse experiences. For active travelers, there are endless ways to enjoy the Malaysian outdoors. Tee off on some of the world's most beautiful golf courses. Explore endless trekking trails or kayak up the river into valleys, forests, and jungles that most people will only ever experience in nature magazines. Then, there are those urban jungles to explore. In Malaysia, the past and the future sit side by side. Some of the New World's most celebrated architectural creations rise above proud historic districts that have changed little for decades. Malaysians love to shop, and the country is packed with modern plazas, quaint shophouses, and sprawling markets. From designer fashions and electronics to exquisite tribal handicrafts and antiques, Malaysia is the place for bargain hunters. There are thousands of temples and places of worship that dazzle the senses and soothe the soul, as well as health and beauty spas waiting to rejuvenate the mind, body, and spirit. Malaysia is a land with a culture as diverse as those who come to experience it. And those who come to visit often return, because no two visits to Malaysia are quite the same.
At the end of this topic, you will be able to appreciate the artifacts and art objects in terms of their utilization and their distinct use of art elements and principles. Let's have a brief history of Malaysian folk arts. The culture of Malaysia draws on the varied cultures of the different people of Malaysia. The first people to live in the area were indigenous tribes that still remain. They were followed by the Malays, who moved there from mainland Asia and ancient times. Traditional Malaysian art is mainly centered on the crafts of carving, weaving, and silversmithing. Traditional jewelry was made from gold and silver adorned with gems, and in East Malaysia, leather and beads were used to the same effect. Now, we will move on to their fabric design. The states of Kelantan and Terengganu are considered the cradle where batik first flourished, reaching even Singapore shores. And they produce two main batiks, and these are the hand-painted and the black-printed. In hand-painted, the artist uses the canteen, a small copper container with one or more different size pipes. In black-printed, it is done by welding together strips of metal to form a metal block. The metal block is then dipped into molten wax and pressed against the fabric to make a pattern.
Did you know that the pharaohs of ancient Egypt wore garments made with thin threads of beaten gold? Some fabrics had up to 500 gold threads per 1 inch of cloth. Sunlight is the oldest known bleaching agent. The ancient Hebrews and Egyptians dipped their fabrics in water and set them out in the sun to bleach.
Now, let us move on to their arts and crafts. One of the popular arts and crafts of Malaysia is the wow kite. Wow kite in Malay is a uniquely designed Malaysian kite. Its wings are similar to an Arabic letter pronounced wow. This kite-making tradition comes naturally to Malaysian people, especially in the Eastern Malayan Peninsula. Did you know that? Pak Shalfi is a legendary kite maker who makes these traditional kites by hand. We actually have our own version of wow kite here in Philippines, and that is popularly known as saranggola. And I know most of us or most of you already played it. Lastly is their sculpture. Most of Malaysian sculptures are relief. These are partially carved out into another surface. These sculptures rely on base to support them and are combination of both 3 and 2-dimensional art forms. Relief sculpture have 3 main types, and these are the alto form, bas form, and the sunken relief sculpture. The first is alto form. Alto form is almost completely carved from its surface, highly shaped, with little of the structure touching if the base or plane will remove. Second is the bas form. Bas form. These are common as wall decorations on Greek or Roman buildings and are the type mostly seen on the Colosseum. And last is the sunken relief sculpture. Sunken relief sculpture, an image that is carved into the surface rather than out of it.
For you to have an idea of what is relief sculpture, please take a look at this video.
I'm Kelly Pereira, and I'll be showing you how to make this northern cardinal portrait in clay. So the supplies that you'll need for this are pretty basic. You'll need a wood panel, various wood and metal sculpture tools, clay of your choice. I'm using JMAC clay, photo references, and a sculpture stand or easel is preferred, though you can work off a table if you have neither of those. So what I've done here is very roughly sketched the portrait of the cardinal right onto the board. You do not need to get detailed here. I think the most important thing is really just to make sure that your proportions are right and that you have the perimeter mapped out. What I like to do is start with the perimeter of the piece. There have been too many times where I've started working on a relief, started working right in the center, achieved some sort of level of finish that I liked, and then I found that the whole piece was just too low and I couldn't get the refinement that I wanted toward the edge. So what I do now is just start at the edge and map that out. You can use whatever type of clay that you want to use, but I find that with water-based clay, with this type of low relief and no clay background, it'll tend to want to shrink a little bit and fall right off your board. You can put anchors into the board, like screws through the back, but I just decided to bypass all of that and use oil-based clay. I also don't have to seal the board before starting my relief. You can see that from my photo references, I've just set up an iPad next to my work with a few different angled shots of the cardinal. You can print out the pictures, you can get a real cardinal, whatever you want to do, but I find that this setup works well for me because I can quickly go onto the internet if I need other angles or other photos. As I work my way around the perimeter, I'm making sure to thoroughly adhere the clay to the board, and I'm working on refining the shape as I go. So I'll give my disclaimer, and that is that there is no right or wrong way to sculpt. There are many different ways, everyone has their own method. I would say just use whatever methods and materials and tools work for you. Everything else that doesn't give you the desired finish or desired outcome, just leave it aside. The most important thing to remember about relief sculpture is that you should be thinking about your subject as if you were sculpting it in the round, just much more compressed. If you aren't thinking about these things will tend to flatten out a little bit. Anatomy and bone structure is also very important to think about, even on a relief like this. It's always helpful to study the anatomy of a creature that you're sculpting. If possible, if you're okay with this kind of thing, you can even order skeletons online. When I was making a sculpture of a rat back in college, I actually ordered a rat skeleton, and having the skeleton and being able to turn each bone around, look at how the shoulder blades attach to the back, look at the shape of the skull in 3D, it really made me think of anatomy, animal anatomy, in a totally different way. If you're not just working during the day, it's nice to get a table light. I'm using a Trond clamp table light, and it allows me to increase the light, decrease the light, and change the temperature. I find that if I'm working on a piece for a long amount of time, it can be nice to change the hue every once in a while. Right now, the eye socket's not quite where I want it to be. It's not receding in space in a way that feels correct. So I'm taking a moment to sculpt around the eye, really push the roundness of the eyeball, and refine the forms in the face. Now I'm seeing that the fullness in the neck seems incorrect, and I'm removing some of that material. The way that you add and remove material should also go with the form itself. The forms of the face are pretty much where I want them to be. It doesn't quite have the likeness of the cardinal yet, but the forms are there. The back part of the head, though, I realized was still a bit full and not receding correctly, so I cut some of that down. I'm also looking very carefully at my references. I find that the eye can kind of make or break the piece, and there are such subtle forms around the eye that you have to nail. It's always really exciting when you finally get to the point where you can focus on the fine details of the piece. So here I'm very closely studying the direction of the feathers, what feathers hit the light, and what feathers create deep areas of darkness. The lower portion of the body still feels like one solid form. It doesn't have a lot of subtlety, so I'm adding a bit of direction in the feathers. I'm adding areas of light and areas of darkness as well. This area I'm pretty much just making up, and I'm just composing it in a way that's aesthetically pleasing. This has to be my favorite part of the sculpture, where I finally get to the motion of the feathers and get to really get into the fine detail. I'll let you all just look at my method and to see that every little mark makes a big difference in the end. This part is pretty much all about mark making. You do have to think about whatever material this will be in the end. I personally use a lot of plaster, so if the outcome is a white cast, if it doesn't have an active surface, it can look pretty dead.
This is about all that I'll show you in the video.
Beyond this point, there's not much left to do other than to push the lights and darks a little bit more and to add more feather detail. I could probably work more toward the lower portion of the sculpture and really make that feel like it's wrapping around, and just focus on the feather structure more. So thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, send me a direct message or an email. Thank you.
Trivia time!
Did you know that the Great Sphinx of Giza was constructed in the Old Kingdom of Ancient Egypt during the reign of Khafra? It is the largest monolith statue and monumental sculpture in the world. The Great Sphinx was so named about 2,000 years after its construction. Despite its prominence, very little is known about the statue, though the face of the Sphinx is generally believed to represent the pharaoh Khafre. However, there are no inscriptions anywhere describing its construction or original purpose. It is not even known what it was originally called, as no reference survive in known Egyptian sources, Sphinx being the name of a similar classical Greek creature. The Great Sphinx is so old that its first restoration dates to 1400 BC, when it was already 1,000 years old. In addition, these are the following benefits of arts and crafts. First, arts and crafts activities can enhance the learner's dexterity and agility. With the enhancement of fine motor skills and much practice, a child's manual dexterity, artistic skills, and speed will also increase. Second, in social benefits, through arts and crafts, learners learn to value and appreciate artifacts and images across cultures and times. Experience in design, arts and crafts enable them to reflect critically on their own work and those by others. They learn to act and think like designers and artists, working intelligently and creatively. They also learn about the preservation of heritage through art. A lot of the information we have now about people that lived millions of years ago came solely from art. Participating with the other students in art class gives the students a chance to interact with others while sharing common interests. The process of arts and crafts also strengthens parent-child bonding. Third, the learner will learn to make correct and effective decisions by facing and solving artistic challenges. This helps to develop a problem-solving attitude, which in turn will help them in the future. And last, making arts and crafts not only help in the above traits but also in boosting academic performance. Above all, these are activities in this module filled with lots of fun for learners.
And that's how wonder the artifact is. Now that we are done with our discussion, I want you to go over with your module and do the assessment part on page 24 to 25 and the additional activity on page 26. Submit your activity sheets to your MAPEH teacher. If you still have questions and clarifications, write it down on your activity sheets or message your arts teacher. See you again next Friday on scheduled time on DWDY-AM, CMD Cable Channel 01, and follow the Facebook page of SDO Cauayan for more information and live updates. Remember that education must continue amid the crisis. This has been Teacher RHEA for Bamboo Telescuela, bringing the education in the comfort of your home. Be safe!